Hello, Internet, and thank you very much for tuning into the Cloud Native FM podcast. And we are actually starting a new series, a six-part panel series on Code to Culture Platform Engineering Unpacked for Enterprises. I'm your host, Saim Safdar, and a CNCF ambassador. And also today joined by my new resident co-host, Cortney Nickerson. A big shout out to my live stream partner, Richard Simon, host of the CloudTherapist YouTube show, who actually sparked up with this idea. And we are running six-part panel series designed for consultant, developer, platform teams, and enterprise leader. Each episode will be shared across both Cloud Native FM and CloudTherapist YouTube channel with curated segment streaming on each YouTube channel. So over the sixth episode, we will unpack how code, team, and organization culture combine to create or break great developer platform, and we're calling the series Code to Culture Platform Engineering Unpacked for Enterprises. And today, conversation asks a big question. Internal developer platform, are they just hype or are the real future of DevOps? With us are the GitLab CTO, Krumware CEO, and a platform consultant and coach with a 3 decade of experience. We can expect concrete stories, honest trade-off, and practical takeaways. Ready, and let's get started. Before we go any further, let's give a big channel welcome to Cortney Nickerson. She will be the co-host for our series on Code to Culture.
Oh, thank you. You're so wonderful. I'm really excited to be here. I'm really grateful to both you and our lovely Mr. Simon, who's on the other side of this, for welcoming me to do this, and really looking forward to some very engaging conversations and learning as we go. So thanks so much. I think we should probably get started.
Our wonderful guest panelists. So Courtney, introduce one by one.
Yeah, I think we should go ahead and, I mean, who better to introduce them except for themselves? So Brian, why don't you kick us off? Who are you and what do you do and why are you here?
All great questions, I think. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Ross. I'm currently Field CTO at GitLab. I've been doing platform engineering for many, many years. I spent 10 years at Sky TV, where I was building out platforms for real and running a large organization across multiple countries. I am largely interested in helping people actually be successful with technology. I've got the uncool opinion that the biggest problem in tech isn't the tech, it's processing people, right? That's where I always see the problems. I'm here largely because, well, first of all, it's lovely to be invited, but also I think there's a lot to share about that element of, if we're building these things out, what makes internal developer platforms different from DevOps or SRE or any of the other buzzwords we've heard before.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us, and I share your very unpopular opinion, so this will be fun. Collin, you next. We'll go in alphabetical order.
There you go. Hey, it's great to see you guys again, and great to be able to do this panel with y'all as well. I'm Collin Griffin. I'm a founder and CEO of Krumware. We founded Krum about 10 years ago almost, so it's been a fun road building a company focused on platform engineering. The fun part for me is my background is software development for real-time systems that get deployed into customers' own infrastructure and environments. And so when I founded Krum about 10 years ago, we went full bore into containers and then subsequently into Kubernetes. But we didn't know what platform engineering was at the time. We were focused on software development and delivery. And the challenge started to arise where our customers didn't have the tools to enable us to actually deliver the software into their environment. So we had to develop an infrastructure practice and a software support and infrastructure support practice. And that really over time has evolved into a platform engineering first approach, or what we would call it today, even though we didn't really have a name for it back then. So it's fun to be able to be here to advocate for the practice. And I'm very much with you guys. I started the company to be able to have an ability to provide tools and systems and advocacy for software developers and just technical employees in general, and give them the tools that they need, enable their bosses and their companies to give them the tools that they need to thrive. So having a lot of fun with this and happy to talk about IDPs today.
Great. Thank you so much for being here with us. It should be interesting to get your viewpoint on things as a builder as well for this community. And how about you, David? Tell us about yourself.
Sure. My name is Dave Stenglein. I am now a solo consultant. I focus on people, platforms, and making organizations more effective. And I agree with Brian and Courtney. I've described it as the final frontier for me as people. Like I've done tech for 3 decades now, and it's not like there isn't anything interesting in tech. And it's not like it isn't challenging, but it's nothing like dealing with helping people change. So that's where I spend a lot of my time. And because platforms are so effective for enabling people, and it's from a lot of my background, I've been building platforms for around most of those 3 decades. It's only become like sort of official in the last 10 years or so. And that's what I enjoy. But yeah, the people are where it's at. And I'm here because Saim asked me to be, and he's such a great member of the community that I can't turn down an offer like that. So
Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot, David.
No, this is very true. I think Saim Safdar is one of the hardest working, most inclusive people around. And so always bringing people together and very, very lovely person to spend some time with. So thank you again, everyone, for being here. I am probably the least qualified of all to be here, so I'm looking forward to learning a lot. I'm the head of community for the 𝗂𝐻𝐴 project, which is created by 𝗑𝗏𝗏. And I do spend a lot of time talking to folks who are building platforms or consider themselves platform engineers, or are really angry because they're actually DevOps, and what in the world is the difference between these two, and why do we have to have this conversation? Or people who are saying, I've been building these things for 10 years, very much like you, Dave. And they never needed to have a title. It was just something that we were doing. So I'm very interested in hearing what everyone has to say today. Just some quick notes for folks who join somewhere throughout this cast. This is going to be set up in 3 different segments. So our first topic is going to be discussing what an internal developer platform actually means, and get some definitions around that, and make sure that we've got some full understandings from different viewpoints. Our second portion is going to be around IDPs and whether they actually incorporate developer experience, what that looks like, how you measure it, what the trade-offs are. And then finally, we're going to look at some best examples for developer experience in IDPs and open source projects that our panelists recommend, and their real world situation with them. So let's jump in with whoever wants to take this question first. What would you define an internal developer platform as? Something that your product is included? Is it for your team? Is it a set of tools? Is it processes? Is it DevOps? What is an internal developer platform? Maybe Dave, you want to take it first.
Okay. I'd say an internal developer platform at a high level is something that makes it easier for everyone to do DevOps. There, I've already addressed the whole DevOps versus platforms. What platform engineering does is enable the people who do a lot of infrastructure side of DevOps deliver their work as a product and be focused on it and develop and deliver it, rather than becoming, like a lot of times people do, a default ops organization. And at the same time, all of the groups who use this infrastructure stuff that all of these systems people have been creating can depend on it like a product, rather than a group of people that serves up tickets, to be completed, builds to be created, pipelines. It starts to become much more product-like. So I don't think, like, platforms have been around forever. Internal developer platforms are now really self-service products. And that's what kind of differentiates them from Unix. Unix is a platform. It abstracts away, managing memory and blocks on disk and things, but it's not good enough for what teams need today to move fast.
Very cool. Brian, would you like to add anything to that? I know we were already talking about customers earlier, so maybe you've got something to add on.
So I think that's maybe the key thing is that we shift IT from the ops side, like the good old days of throwing it over the wall between dev and ops, because we know that didn't work. And we tried DevOps, we tried getting developers and operators together, which really did work, which was phenomenal, but it turned out to be quite costly. And having lots of teams in a large enterprise all doing their own thing, although it might be the best thing for their project, might not be the best thing for the company as a whole. So what we're trying to do is mix those together, I think, to form platform engineering, where you do have a centralized function, but they're very much focused on serving the needs of developers. And the word customer is the most powerful word in the world for platform engineering. They may just be peers in your organization, but they're your customers. You are there to help them do their jobs. You're there to listen to what they need. And it's very much a customer service role as opposed to that horrible world of support tickets that we knew from before, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I see is people trying to figure out how to serve a customer in this space. A lot of people don't actually have customer service experience or have ever actually thought about it that way. So I often come across people that struggle with that, but especially as they're building tools for this space. So Collin, a little bit of your insight, because I know that you do a lot of time, spend a lot of time building things for platform engineers. How do you see that? You're on mute, by the way.
Well, Colin, you're muted.
It's because I have a loud, clicky, dumb keyboard that I use. I forgot that it was on, so sorry if it went over David's talking earlier, Slack messages. Yeah, a platform, internal developer platform, I think everyone's spot on. For me, it boils down to a curated collection of tools and resources for developers. These tools and resources should facilitate consumption of like internal tools and other parts, other things that are made available in the technical organization, but should most importantly help direct the developers down a path of delivering value for their customers, right? Developers are our customers as platform teams, but who are their customers? And that could be sales teams, that could be external customers, it could be anything. And so we need to provide some guidance and some facilitation to help developers take advantage of resources that are available to them and do it in a way that helps limit the amount of invention that they have to do consistently and helps prevent that and prevent some of that waste. But most importantly, we have to understand what our developers need and what their challenges are and properly connect those other resources and tools to be leveraged and used and consumed in a way that the developers are capable of. And so like if somebody has a big internal data platform, right, it may not be the best thing for a developer to go use Kibana or Elastic or something to interact directly with that. It may mean that we need a CLI tool or some sort of other portal, but we need to talk to our developers and understand their way of thinking and their perspective on these other needs. And an IDP is a way to customize access to those things and make sure they can do their jobs the best that they can.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Go for it, Sam.
Just one question, I think, on that angle as well. I think I will go to the Brian Ross again because he works at GitLab and development is a bigger portion of what everyone doing on the IDP. I think the one natural question people are asking every day is like, why the developer is at the forefront of an IDP movement? It's like just because everywhere you look at the market perspective and also from the boss, some other people are building for the builder perspective. It seems like they're targeting or tying into the development use cases. So why it is so that everybody naturally try to fill in the development gap rather than the other IT role that exists is kind of a missing in the initial conversation in the IDP world.
So that's a really good question. I think first and foremost, we need to recognize that if you're running an internal platform, you have more people to look after than just developers. That being said, developers, I think, are the primary customer because from a team topologies perspective, they are the closest aligned to providing value to the business. In other words, it's developers that are going to create things that drive revenue. And we've all got important jobs in an organization, but developers are the ones that are closest to it. So we're there, all part of the same team. It takes takes a village to deliver software. We're all there to support developers, to make things quickly, to make things of a higher quality. It's all about building great software faster. And as we've kind of highlighted, there's the job of an IDP is to help developers not have to reinvent the wheel every single time. It's there to stop simple mistakes. It's there to avoid lots of boilerplate. It's there just to make their collaboration easier. So from GitLab, the reason I joined the company is not because it's a great CI software. It's because I love the way that it brings people together from all different backgrounds into a single platform so they can converse together, so they can help each other fix problems. So I think that's the core of platform engineering, is bringing people together, because it does take everyone to help to build good quality software.
I
Yes.
could say something about that, Saim, from
Yes,
like a
absolutely.
historical perspective. When you look at how, DevOps came about, it was about, getting Dev and Ops together, but it was driven by Ops, right? The people who really got behind the whole DevOps movement were mainly systems people who were responsible for things being tossed over the wall. So, there was frustration on all sides, right? When things didn't get delivered well, when things are tossed over the wall, but it impacted ops people the most. And there's a big push for DevOps, but mostly from systems people. And there's still plenty of developers who feel like systems people should still be just doing it, right? Just take care of the deployments, just take care of the support and all of that. So I think the reason there's more focus on developers now is that organizations that did embrace DevOps need to be able to do it across the board. And that doesn't just mean the ops people doing ops, it means people being able to be focused on their domain. And developers haven't had that attention, right? The DevOps stuff really focused on tools that help the developers, but were mainly for automating ops practices, right? So now the push with platforms is to get further into what do developers actually need to do their work, not just deploy code, right? And that's, I think, the biggest, most important thing for moving from DevOps to platforms, is that a lot of the focus is on what does a developer do all day? And it's not deploy software endlessly, right? It's building software and deploying as part of that.
I think it's such an interesting take a moment and literally say this is a movement that's based on humans and the human problem of a bunch of people in ops not really having any idea what the day-to-day of their colleagues over in development were actually living. And I think probably it's the same both ways, right? It's a two-way street. There are a lot of times that developers as well don't actually understand all of the challenges that their infrastructure teams are having to deal with. And so that's kind of one of those things in that whole continuous integration and deployment process where you've got developers saying, if you give me an extra 6 hours, I can send you something that's actually in condition. And everybody else is saying, no, just ship it. And having those moments of not really understanding each other, I think it's fantastic to take a moment and look at the fact that IDPs and platform in itself is really trying to address that lack of communication and knowledge about each other, because we all think, oh, well, we're sitting in the same company, we have the same goals. But at the end of the day, do we really? I think is something we probably don't ask enough. It's a very, very interesting to see it from that viewpoint. As people are doing,
just a one question on to the Collin. I'm going there as well, and later I'll ask the same question to Brian as well. Is like I did an episode with Nicky Watts from the platform engineering community. I think he's a very, very good member explaining these platform concept. He said like there is a very confusion in the industry around the way the vocabulary works in the IDP world. The IDP is a confusing vocabulary. It's not really understand when you talk to the customer. So he said like we'd rather shift from internal developer platform to the outcome-based platform. That's rather tell the customer like we're not just talking about the theoretical aspect of it, we're talking about some of the outcome-based aspect of it. So, Collin, are you hearing the same challenges on the vocabulary side when you actually been working on the Krumware internal developer kind of capabilities?
I need a tool for an automatic unmute. Zoom, if you're listening. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that. But I might have a little bit of a different take on it. I think one of the key skill sets that we're seeing evolve in platform engineering, obviously, is the product tool set and like the ability to understand the needs of your users. But I think it's the ability to it's almost like out of body, right? It's to be able to see things from other people's perspectives and do the research and gain the experience in the roles that other people are fulfilling to gain their perspectives as well. And I think language is very important. And we, as platform engineers, we almost need to know multiple terms for one concept so that we can communicate it to the right people at the right time. I think that IDP has become too broad of a term, not the term's fault itself. I think that IDP should be specific to an internal developer platform. And you can have multiple IDPs as long as we clarify who is the developer in this case. And it's challenging because is a data team member a developer? Is a DevOps team member a developer? The answer is like sometimes yes, sometimes no. And so if they're doing development related things and they're producing things for folks, then yeah, they need an IDP or they need to be included in, a broader IDP, but we have this perception that there's one platform to rule them all. And that's not the case at all. As a matter of fact, organizations often already have established platforms internally, and they are, in for data teams, for DBAs, for just cloud infrastructure and virtualization. There are platforms there. And so the use of platform can be very confusing. And so we need to find more specific language. But the thing that I say about this, the movement or the hype cycle is really these concepts have already been around. They're not new, right? It's applying product-driven concepts and things that we learn delivering to customers to ourselves and kind of introspecting and looking and seeing where we can provide value. And to Nicky's point, exactly, what we do is when we talk with technical leaders, we try to evaluate the concept of how they perceive their IT organization and do they look at it as a cost center, right? Or do they understand the value chain and how value gets delivered from these parts of the organization? To tack on the previous question too, I think developers, maybe because there's so much chaos and so much room for growth and for opportunity to kind of cut through that noise, maybe that they're just the lowest hanging fruit. They also are in the best position to create something and be collaborative if we need to create something, or to be able to dictate this is how we do something, right? So once IT leaders give them the power to develop their internal capabilities, then organizations find and they say, oh, we need a dedicated team for this. So what's that called? Oh, it happens to be platform engineering. And so we're seeing it evolve from the different practices. But we try to help organizations say, okay, let's take a step back and look first and see what will drive value for the business, whether it's delivery to end customers immediately and improving that, or it's finding ways to leverage the capabilities and skills of people we have on staff to improve the overall health of the business and find other ways to drive value. And so if we can turn that perspective and say, okay, how are we going to turn our IT organization into a value center instead of a cost center? And what will that take? Often, I think platform engineering strategy will come up at the core of that, especially since it's fresh in conversation. So definitely we need better terms, but we need to have the awareness to meet the organization at what they understand, where they are in their maturity, and what terms do they use and what's beneficial to the business. So it's challenging to say we need to change a blanket term. I think we just all need to have a conversation about it and determine what it means to us.
Absolutely. And I think all of us on the call, we also work on the CNCF, and I think the platform working group, and like Collin, David, Brian, also the very active member of the platform working group in the past and also in the present. I think they'll lay down a wonderful some of the definition term and some of the umbrella white paper as well. I think that's a really good effort because there's a very much confusing market in the IDP world. Even though you speak about it, I think the rest of the world is also not even able to understand how the Kubernetes ecosystem work, and we actually chiming in add more curiosity on top of it. So sometimes for the people, with the naive user who just want to problem solving, look for the problem solutions for their own problem, for them to add more term in the vocabulary, it's a kind of a frustrating things for them. It's not gonna shine for us, but the rest of the world say, what the hell is we talking about? So I think the good effort by the CNCF working group members who actually put up some definition. I really like the effort being put forward to actually answering those terminologies. So let's move on to the next section that's very important on the developer experience side of the thing. And I go to that Brian Ross, who's at the better to start this thing because we use GitLab all of the time as well. So Brian, based on your conversation with the customers and also on the GitLab side, I remember I did an episode with you on the DevEx, and you gave me some new terminologies back then. So I really love your knowledge on the subject. So give us some insights around how do you feel DevOps should be incorporated, DevEx should be incorporated inside the IDP?
So I think developer experience, or DevEx, is really important because ultimately we're trying to produce a product. The goal is to build something that people want to use. And I think that's one of the problems we have, especially in large enterprises, is that we build something, often to Courtney's point, we haven't really listened to what someone needed. We've built what we think they need, and then we force or mandate them to use it. And that's a terrible recipe for a product, right? It needs to be something they want to use. So developer experience, I think, is really important. So step number one is, as Collin says, it's going out and listening to what are the challenges in that particular business. Like, we're not all Facebooks or Metas and Amazons, so we can't just copy those playbooks, right? We need to really think about our businesses and what challenges we have. Once we've got those, we need to build systems that work. Now, I've got a simple rule when I'm building platforms. The first is that as a brand new developer to the platform, it should be obvious to me how something works. In other words, a hello world should feel incredibly easy. And then likewise, I should have the confidence to know that with a little bit of work reading documentation, that complex stuff is also possible. And I think if you master those two parts, that's a good way of approaching developer experience. But I think as well is that the goal sometimes gets missed when we think too much about the entire path for that software. So for example, if we're working in a big financial institution, we may find there's 1,000 different steps that people need to go through before they can put software into production. Like, an important part is not just replicating all of that in technology, but really thinking about where that process is fit for purpose. In other words, if we have an approval step that has to be done before every deployment, how many times does that approval step get rejected? And my question is, if the answer is never, then does it need to be an approval step, or could that be a review point later? And that's how we go about speeding things up. And again, this is an important part of DevEx, right? Is that developers ultimately want to be able to produce a piece of software and see the outcome of their work. They want to.
One thing I learned from the recent article, and I can go back to the David on this point, there's a term called Golden Path, and there are some term called herding or shepherding. Like, people like to call it forceful direction for the ITP and the recommended direction for the developers. So what is the trade-off, or what kind of a right balance to actually look into it? Like, is a shepherding or kind of a forceful direction or a recommendation direction? So what could you advocating for the developers inside the IDP? David, back to you.
So I think that's a very context-specific thing in multiple ways. So it has to do with the organization, and it has to do with what parts of the platform experience / developer experience that you need to mandate versus, inform and recommend. So I'd say that shepherding is always going to make a platform more successful, right? You're going to, mandated platforms usually don't have as much adoption, even though they're mandated, right? People can just dig in their heels and, or look for alternatives, and that's how you get shadow IT. But you can't shepherd everything. There are things that have to be there, call those guardrails, right? So the guardrails are the things that are there for herding, but you want them to be easy to follow. And that's where the golden path thing comes in too, right? A golden path with good guardrails that allows people to kind of wander a bit, but all end up going in the same direction. That's like the ideal experience for people. They don't feel completely closed in and limited from possibilities. But then it also depends on the size of an organization that may not have the ability to give everyone the chance to figure it out and find their own way, and the regulatory environment that you're in too. There might be much more severe problems with letting people go off and figure things out versus, just following the rules so that you can pass audits. Just to make it simple, large organizations probably going to tend more towards herding. Small organizations or very flexible organizations going to be more about shepherding, and regulated, highly regulated versus less regulated are going to be sort of similar.
I'd just add, it's unpopular in the IT world, but the answer is always both, right? And it's about deciding where and when. So even in highly regulated environments, there are some things that definitely need to be controlled, but there's still other things that can have choice. And I think in the IT world, this is where we often fall down a rabbit hole, is that we try and choose one versus another, whereas 9 times out of 10, it's a mixture of the two. So in simple ways, it's things like should you have more than one way of authenticating a customer? Probably not. Or logging. Do you want 12 different ways of logging? It's probably not helpful. But do you want to have everyone using the exact same database in the exact same database configuration? Probably not. And I think we just need to have balance, I think, in how we go about designing systems. But as I say, I know this is not something that in the IT world we're generally very good at.
But I do think it's really, really important to kind of pause there and consider why it's such a struggle to not be good at that in life in general. And it seems we always talk about software as having a life cycle and having a beginning and an end, and it starts and it grows and it adapts to its customers and the people that it's serving. But then there seems to be a struggle on that side of adapting to the people that we're serving who are actually part of that life cycle. And I think there's a certain aspect, again, going back to the human factor of things, that humans change, and you might have one set team that really needs a lot of shepherding at first, right? But then they mature and they grow, and you can kind of give them some leadway on things. And then all of a sudden, one of those people leaves, or two of them leave and go on to something else. And all of a sudden, you have a completely different chemistry and mixture of knowledge base and people who are there. And I think a lot of times platform teams, that is really the challenge that they're faced with, is figuring out what things you need to be very opinionated and very strict on, because people need to be all using the same things and going in the same direction. But the other things that you need to have a little bit of leeway so that your teenager will be willing to do what you want them to do. Because oftentimes when we're talking about teams and the way they work, there are certain components that very much are a combination of parenting, right? We have some golden rules and some pathways for you to follow because we've set this path, but also you need to make your own decisions because that's going to make you more productive and more capable, and more well-rounded, and that's better for everyone. And so I think you've raised a really interesting point, and I think it's probably something that overall people should be talking about a lot more. Why does everything have to be so rigid when the truth is you probably do need some things that are rigid and other things that allow for growth?
Yes. Just a final question on the DevOps subject, and I go to the Collin this time. So the Collin, I think, if you look at some of the article quite recently being written down, it's like some people say, like, when we are actually abstracting a lot of the stuff because developers have to deal with Kubernetes clusters, service meshes, GitOps, infrastructure as code, pipeline, blah, blah, blah. Now we have prompt-based setups in place. So I need to create a cluster for this app. Now you're building up an IDP. and some developer using the prompt base. So some people, critics call it, the AI don't need abstraction at all. It's, if you call them, oh, I need an access to, let's say, I need to build out a pipeline on any, let's say, Python on any language, is irrespective of how it's have been doing. So we build out abstraction for the humans, but the AI doesn't need that. So now the IDP movement is kind of targeting these umbrellas. So what do you think, like these natural triangle between developers, AI capabilities, and IDP, how they can combine together? Like, what are the abstraction that you added inside the IDP for the developer, and how the AI is actually being using inside in the IDP? Because at some time, AI is calling the cloud provider and APIs, and at times developer is calling the APIs of the cloud providers. How do we balance those aspects? And also on the Krumware side, how are we actually looking at these solutions?
100%. So like one of the challenges that we were talking through in the past question too, it's like there's two big areas that I see that are preventing evolution or preventing growth related to platform engineering, and it's inside of an organization, and it's internal competitiveness between other IT organizations and saying the stay off my lawn strategy, right? Don't change the way that I'm doing things. This platform initiative feels like a threat to the way I do things. The other side is controlled evolution or controlled innovation, or guided or facilitated innovation internally. And AI is great for platform engineering because it exposes the holes that are in place at an organization. One of the things that we're looking at are things like, how do I prevent my customers' data from getting exposed? But how do I allow a developer to use, any AI tool that they want, or build some flexibility in that stack and help standardize what AI means to us? The other side as well is when we're planning things internally, we find that there are times where we get advice from an AI, and somebody just posts it in and expects it to work out as a plan, and it turns out it doesn't fit the way we do things at all, and it will actually cause more chaos. And AI is really interesting in that front because I think it's exposing the idea that a lot of the organizations that we talk to have no idea how they do software development. They have no idea how they do IT. They have no strategy at all whatsoever, and they're expecting AI to solve that for them. And if AI's job is it's really good at connecting all of these different parts and pieces, if it has no idea what your parts and pieces are, how is that going to be helpful to anybody? And the answer is it's not, right? So we're constantly trying to leapfrog to the next great thing. And AI is obviously the revolution that's happening right now, but organizations need to step back and define how they develop, how they do software, what their goals are, and expose that, and even maybe train your own agents, do something. And I think that's the next big wave with micro models and providing some more control over that and doing some things there. But it's just pure and utter chaos if we unleash these AI agents, and maybe somebody's going to be watching this and roll their eyes and all that, but it really, we could create so much chaos that it actually harms the organization as opposed to actually helps the organization. And so we need to take a step back and say, okay, so how should we do this work? We don't have a way to define this. There should be rules for this. If there aren't any, let's go create some, and let's all get broader agreement, and let's feed that back in so that we know when I ask Copilot or whatever else, hey, I need to develop an app. Well, how do we develop apps if the AI tool can come back with that and deliver that in our standardized way, which sounds a lot like a platform providing a golden path, then we're starting to get success. But I'm really concerned about the chaos it creates, and I think metrics are coming out about that now, which is nice to see. It's not nice to see, but it's nice to see that in many organizations, use of AI is actually making people less efficient. And so I think if we take a step back, look at our AI readiness, make sure that we have the tools that can work with artificial intelligence tools, and along the way also start to define our rules and mature our approach, which happens to be good, platform as a product approach or other platform engineering principles that are being popularized, then I think we're set up for success.
Yes, absolutely. I think that the policy makers inside the organization or the enterprises, they're having a very hard time. They're figuring out what are the ways we can get out of this world, because now things are quite messy up. I think back in the days when we talk about these policy enforcement tool, they kind of, oh, do we really need them? But now I think we live in a world, they're making a more sense, because I think if considering the MCP protocol and these things, I think you don't have some check in place in the cluster or in the cloud. I think you are having a very bad day, or the bad day that just coming out of the business as well. And that's where I think tools like Kyverno, Open Policy Agent, a bunch of other really exemplify the constructs around the developer experience. But unfortunately, we need to go for the next segment. And that's a very quick, rapid fire questions we will be asking for some of our wonderful guests who have been dealing. So, Courtney, pick some questions and we can ask our guest from some of the rapid fire.
Absolutely. We'll start with Collin. Top 3 tools the platform engineers should be picking, whether they're open source or otherwise.
Kubernetes. I think everyone knows that one. I think finding a good orchestrator. We use Rancher, shameless plug. Something that is open, extensible, runs on foundational principles, enables progressive enhancement and opt-in. I think putting some principles in place there, and that's one that follows that we use as a platform orchestrator more so than a Kubernetes orchestrator. So that's a great tool for us. And then I'll plug Backstage again. Backstage can be pure and utter unadulterated chaos at an organization, but it also can push us down the right paths. It forces us to kind of design and go through a design initiative with our platforms and understand what we have. It also kind of forces us to go through an inventory what we have. And so it's trying to develop for that and doing it the right way and intentionally is a great facilitator for platform growth and development.
Ryan, coming from GitLab, for folks who are considering going the straight open source route, what are the most important points of evaluation or criteria that they should be thinking about?
So, as always, it's the best tool for the job. So I would encourage any firm to remember that irrespective of what software you buy or build, there is more to it than just installing and getting it running. You need to dedicate time to really getting the most out of that product. When it comes to open source, I think you need to be looking at the community that's behind it. I think you need to be considering whether there's some level of vendor support available. I know, again, if you're working in a highly regulated environment, that's going to be a must. But and above all, is this a company, a community that you can work with? I would say that anyone that's interested in open source, it is not free. So if you are of the opinion that we can do this for lots of money or this one's for free, that's not how open source works. But I would say as well that if you get involved with an open source project, like GitLab, for example, then the best way of learning that and the best way of getting the output from it is to get involved with it. So a lot of our code is actually generated from our customers and from other contributors. That's what open source is really about. It's so that you've got the software, you can modify it, you can see how it works, you can help steer its direction. And that's the things that I think are really valuable about open source.
Dave, final question. As somebody who actually works at facilitating change amongst different teams, what is the first true conversation that platform engineers should be having with their developers as they're establishing a change moving forward?
Turn off mute. Probably the first thing, even before they talk to their developers, is figure out how they will talk to their developers, which is to not talk at them, but to ask questions. So the most important conversation is one where they sit down, ask questions, and listen, and give the developers some open-ended ways to express how they get their work done, how effective they believe they can be in the current environment, and what they think they need or want, and just simply listen. And I think so the very first thing you would do is go, what stops you from delivering? Right? Is probably the very first thing you'd want to go and find out. And you probably get a litany of things in most organizations. And that's your starting point for digging deeper and finding out what the actual needs are. Because developers will say, I want this, but what they actually need is something different. But if you don't listen to what they want, they won't feel heard, and you won't necessarily figure out what they need.
Super insightful. All three of you. Those are fantastic answers to some very solid questions. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. So just a closing point, and that's the final question before we wrap it up. I think because we talk about developers a lot, and if we wear everyone on this call, if we wear a one hat as a developer, so the one question I say, so one IDP feature that you feel developers say, wow. Collin, from you.
Man, that's loaded. Honestly, I'm gonna pick an easy one. I get a preview URL.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right? I launch an app and it's available to somebody and I can see it and test it. Holy cow. Or I have a preview URL for my app and it has a certificate, right? It has a valid certificate. Honestly, I think organizations jump past that, and I've seen platforms that try to go through a big development or build effort and they skip that part, assuming that it's not necessary or maybe it's extra. And I need a developer in order to get buy-in to point, click, launch an app. It's there, in order to get their buy-in and their trust.
IDP feature, you think developers say, wow.
So I'm going to cheat a little bit and say the one that they need first is probably CI/CD, because that's the part that guides them in terms of how do we make software here. But no one really says wow to a CI/CD, right? It's not that exciting. The bits that they want, the bits that make them say wow, in the last little while, it might be unpopular, but it's been integrated AI in that CI. So using AI as a tool, not just to write code, but to help us understand existing code bases. So for example, the biggest I see is probably root cause analysis in GitLab. Everyone loves it. It's a single button that you push, which will read your 4,000 lines of build logs and then explain to you that you're missing a semicolon in your Docker file. Right. Like, we've all been there. It's wasted hours of our time. Yes. We know it's always something simple, and it's just lovely that there's just a push button to do that. It doesn't need to be complex all the time, but that just, it's not big changes. I think this is what David was saying, is that it's the parts that are stopping developers that they might not realize. It's the things that they don't realize that we can fix for them.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So I think that's where my brain matches with Brian on the CI/CD side. I think that's a very... David, same question. One IDP's feature, do you think developer will say, wow?
It goes back to the self-service, and what I've heard from devs is the fact that they can get done in a week or two what used to take them like 3 months of hardware acquisition and different teams spinning things up, and that's a tremendous thing for them. That's one of the most noticeable things for them.
And Courtney, same question. living on the policy side, tell us.
Living on the policy side, frankly, on the policy side, what I discover that people want sometimes is just having very clear 3 things that I'm not supposed to do. So what is the CPU limit? Just tell me what it is. Tell me what it is, that I just set it there and I don't touch it again. Again, going back to what David and Brian and Collin are all reiterating, the simplest things make people very happy. And it is a constant. I love the fact that we have a policy that sets my CPU on this cluster and I just know what it is. So very simple, straightforward things that make everybody's path a lot more golden, I think is
awesome.
What
Great.
people love.
Wonderful. So
awesome. Great. People love.
Wonderful. So from my side, because I work with a large development team, so I love the vCluster approach of ephemeral environment inside the PRs. Rather than polluting a big PR for everyone, let's run it in the vCluster setup. When the pipeline is hit, tested, verify the results, and then merge into the main PR. I think that's where I can make the nightmare out of my ops team. So I like this kind of a CI/CD things, as Brian told. So I think that's a natural bit. But thank you very much. As always, every time I speak with this wonderful guest, I learned a lot. You have been appearing on our YouTube channel for a bunch of times. So really, thank you very much for actually spending time with us on this conversation. I think it's a very emergence of the time that we're talking about this conversation. So I think the quick takeaways, I might be wrong here, defined the IDP you actually need, and kind of a measure the developer experience, what the metrics you already have, and design some golden path with escape hatches. And I can link some of the blog posts, some of the platform coffee things that the David is running, some of the CNCF stuff that Collin and Brian is also working on. Brian is working on the content club. That's a really cool idea to ask people to work on the blog post and at the terms of some of the things they're working on. I'll link those up if you're interested in talking about it as well. Special thanks to my guests, Collin, Brian, David, for wonderful insight. And thank you very much, Cortney, for your co-hosting this episode with me. And we will be meeting again for the next episode on the CloudTherapist YouTube channel, where we'll be talking about some other episode 2 of Code to Culture on platform engineering unpacked for enterprises. So thank you very much for listening to this conversation. If you have any question, please link them on the comment section here. I will look forward to answering those as well. Have a wonderful day. Stay happy.